Hi, good morning and welcome. My name is Gwen Gringheis and I'm the Assistant Registrar International and Recruitment at the John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design. And thank you so much for joining us this morning. I don't know where in the world you are joining us from, and so perhaps it's good evening or good afternoon, but we're very pleased that you have joined us today. I'm also joined by my colleague Amelia Chung, who will be joining us for answering some questions after the formal presentation. So while everyone is joining us, I do want to take a moment to pause and to reflect. And so while I recognize this is a virtual information session and we are not all in the same place, I would encourage you to think and pause and reflect upon the lands where you might be located. For myself, I'm thinking of the lands on which the University of Toronto operates, and for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. If you are familiar with the University of Toronto, you might be aware that it is one university with three campuses. If you're not familiar with the University of Toronto, let me tell you a little bit about it. And so there is the University of Toronto Mississauga campus, the University of Toronto Scarborough campus, and then there's the University of Toronto St. George campus, which is located downtown Toronto. For the Daniels faculty, we are located on the St. George campus, which is located in downtown Toronto and is a beautiful backdrop for our building and for where our students study. So in this photo, you get to see a little bit more about where Daniels is located or situated in the city of Toronto. And so if you take a look at this photo in that circle in the middle of the photo, that's the Daniels building. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in detail, but you can see there is the backdrop of this Toronto City skyline and the CN Tower, which is located at the top of the photo there. And so that might give you a little bit of a sense as to where we are located in the heart of downtown Toronto. So today what we're going to cover is an introduction to Daniels, the faculty, as well as the programs that we offer at the undergraduate level. We will cover an overview of admissions and how to apply, after which we will open it up for your questions and answers. So if you have any questions during the presentation, I strongly encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And when the presentation is finished, we will open it up and we will do our best to get through all of the questions that you might have. So this is another angle of the building that you saw in the previous photo. So this is the Daniels building located at 1 Spadina Crescent in Toronto. And we talk a lot about this building. It's a unique space. It was recently renovated in 2017, 2018. And you can see there is an addition onto the back of the building there, which has created lots of different spaces for students to be able to study in, to research, to learn, play, and create. And you can see the original building also is from an older time. And so there's a lot of history involved in that building as well. And so that building has been around since the 1860s and has a long history in the city of Toronto as part of the University of Toronto and is now home to the Daniels faculty. Here's some photos of just some of the spaces that students have access to and utilize on a fairly regular basis. And so while we would absolutely love for you to come to see the campus and see the building yourself, I'll try to explain just some of these spaces so you have an idea of just some of the spaces that students will be studying and working in. And so in that bottom photo there, you see it looks with all the chairs set up. That's our main hall. And that space is used for lectures on a fairly regular basis. And you can see this, the chairs are set up for a lecture. It could be used for a guest speaker, and fairly frequently there's guest speakers who are practitioners, researchers, educators who come and share their knowledge and experience with our students. This space can also be used for design-a-thons or other events that are happening for students, orientation and otherwise. It's a very utilized space and it's kind of at the heart of the Daniels building. On the left-hand side of your page there is one of our labs, and this is a fabrication lab. And in this space, there is a lot of different tools and materials and things that students would be working with. And so if students are interested in working with metal or wood, there's also a kiln in this space. That photo there specifically is one of the robotic arms that is utilized by students for creating and research. The top middle photo is one of these studio spaces for students. So in this program, students are doing a lot of creating as well as learning, and they need that space to be able to be messy and build and create and make mistakes and try again. So that's one of the spaces that students have available to them as a studio space. And then in the far right is a photo of the stacks, which is in the library that students make use of on a regular basis as well. And so this library holds many materials related specifically to the programs in the Daniels faculty. There's also periodicals and lots of quiet study spaces. We are often asked, why do students decide to study at the Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape, and Design? And while the reasons can be endless and also very individualized to each student and their own personal decision making, these are a few of the reasons that we hear from students as to why they've decided to study here. One of the reasons is the students. It's the community itself. Our students are very creative. They're academically smart and very gifted. They're collaborative. It's a close-knit community. And so it's a small environment within a large university setting. Our professors, we're also very proud of our professors. And they're also, while educators, some of the industry's greatest designers, researchers, and artists, they are also practitioners. And the student professor ratio tends to be quite small at 25-1. The environment is also really important for students. In some of the photos you saw previously, you can see where we are located in the downtown core of the city of Toronto, which is essentially a playground for our architectural studies and visual studies students. It's a large metropolitan city, which is in and of itself a bit of a living lab. And of course, the amazing studio spaces and lab spaces that are available for students. And then for others, the rankings and reputation is really important to them, and it played into their decision making. And so it is very well ranked by the QS World Rankings at number 2 in Canada and 37 in the world. It is internationally recognized and has a very long history. So as mentioned, we do have 2 undergraduate degree programs, architectural studies as well as visual studies. And we'll talk a little bit more about each of those programs as well as the admission requirements in the next few slides. But we will also be hosting information sessions with our program directors to talk about each of these programs in a lot more detail. So first up is architectural studies. And architecture is an interesting one because it's both a profession as well as a discipline of study. And so this relates to a lot of different options and career opportunities for students graduating from these programs. As a profession, it's really important in creating a built environment and bringing in all of the technical and social, as well as the practical and theoretical. And so for students who are interested in a little bit of all of that, they may find that this is a really good choice for them. And so thinking about how a built environment is impacted by culture as well as artistic practice, thinking about urbanization and change, and even environmental sustainability is all included when thinking about this program. It is also an area that incorporates a lot of different disciplines. And so it truly is very interdisciplinary. And so for students who are creative, but also like the social sciences, humanities, as well as a little bit of engineering and technology, this is a fantastic opportunity to explore all of that. In the first year of the program, this is what the students will be taking. And so there are quite a few required courses. And so there's 4 courses or 4 credits that are required in the first year, and students are automatically enrolled in these courses. And they do have one option is an elective. An elective course is what they can choose what they're interested in. It doesn't even have to be related to their main area of study. They have some flexibility in choosing that. But you can see from the fall term as well as the winter term that there's some similarities in the courses. Often think of the first year as like building blocks, and so these courses build upon one another. And so the first courses in the fall term will be built upon as well in the winter term. What that can look like in terms of a schedule, and this is a sample schedule, and it might not be exactly what someone's schedule would look like, but this is just to give you an idea of what it might look like. And so these are the required courses in the first year of the Architectural Studies program, and it doesn't include the elective course, which could be at any point on the schedule. So as an example, if you take a look at the fall term, at this point, the Tuesday is completely open, but if someone adds an elective course that has a class on the Tuesday, that could fill that up, or they could put their elective course on any one of the other days and keep their Tuesday free. And so coming from high school, where students are typically enrolled in courses every day of the week, this can be definitely a change, and getting used to managing the schedule can be a little bit of a switch. Our visual studies program is also a unique opportunity for students who are interested in being creative, interested in art, but are also wanting to study in a space that has rigorous academic, interdisciplinary opportunities as well. And so students will have an opportunity to really practice through their lectures and studio courses, seminars, and field trips, but they're also left with some space in their program to explore other academic interests as well. And so if students are interested in combining this with a few other areas, they do have that opportunity as well. And so in the first year of the visual studies program, you can see there's slightly less required courses and a little bit more opportunity for flexibility with the two electives. And so again, electives are opportunities to choose what you are interested in, and they do not have to be specifically related back to your main area of study. Once again, building blocks, so some of the courses in the fall term will be built upon in the second term. And this schedule again as a sample schedule as to what it might look like, and the elective courses still have to be added in as well. But to just give you an idea what it could possibly look like for students when designing and building their schedules. So the programs both kind of at a glance, they can be very similar. And the reason I'm including both of these is sometimes students are trying to decide between architectural studies and visual studies, and they can only apply to one of these. And so both of them are Bachelor of Arts degrees, both of them are honors degrees. And then some of this terminology can be a bit confusing. And so don't get too concerned. I will explain it in another slide, but to just understand that both have the opportunities to be a specialist program. For architectural studies, it is a specialist program, and students are enrolled in the comprehensive specialist program for the first 2 years, and then they have the opportunity to stay in that or choose from design, history and theory, or technology. Architectural studies students have their studio space pretty much in the Daniels building that I showed you in some of the previous slides. The visual studies program has the choice, they can do a specialist or a major. And then they do have two options for specialist streams, that's studio or critical practices. And then if they're a major student, they do also have to include another major, or they can do two minors. Their studio space is primarily in the Borden building, which is across the road from the Daniels building. So this is some of the terminology that we was referring to. And so just keeping in mind that it mostly refers to the number of credits in a subject area. And so a specialist would have the most number of credits in a subject area. A major would have slightly less, and a minor would have the smallest amount. And so we work with academic advisors for all of our students. And so if students have any questions at all throughout this process, they would just talk to the academic advisors who would be able to explain this for them and help them build their schedules and timetables. So we'll switch gears a little bit and we'll talk a little bit about the admissions and application information for these programs. If you are applying from an Ontario high school, you do need to have your Ontario Secondary School diploma, which includes your English 4U or the equivalent, and then your top 5 U and M courses. The academic average that we are looking for should be in the high 80s to low 90s. And then there is a One Idea supplemental application, which I will talk about in a little bit more detail. If you are applying from outside of Ontario, The minimum admission requirements can vary a little bit depending on your educational background. And I would strongly encourage you to check out the website to see the different equivalencies for the different provinces in Canada, or if you're applying with international credentials, and that can be very helpful. If you're not able to access that information, please just reach out, send us an email. We are more than happy to answer those questions or to point you in the right direction. The One Idea supplemental application is also required. You will apply through the Ontario University Application Centre, and I'll explain in a little bit more detail soon. But the two codes that you would need for our programs would be the TLA for Architectural Studies and TLB for Visual Studies. So the Ontario University's Application Centre is a portal for all Ontario universities. And so when you apply, your one application fee includes 3 choices, but students can add additional choices if they wish to at an additional cost. And so those 3 choices can be at any Ontario university for any program. You can also have them all at the same university. That choice is yours. So the One Idea supplemental application is one that we do tend to get a lot of questions about. There's 2 parts to it. The first part is mandatory for both of our programs. It's a short essay response to one of 4 questions, and it is required for both of our programs. We would encourage you to take your time, make sure that it is a very genuine, thoughtful, creative response, because it is read and it is carefully reviewed. The second part is a portfolio. And so this is required for our visual studies applicants, and it is optional for our architectural studies applicants. And so students can upload 4 to 6 images of creative work, and there's no specific medium or requirements as to what it must be. Students have an opportunity to demonstrate their own creativity through this process. For some of our applicants who are applying from different countries or from different languages where you've previously studied, the language was of both examination and study was not English, you likely will need to submit an English proficiency test. And so these are some of the tests that you can submit and the scores as well that can be accepted. I strongly encourage you to take a look on the website to double check all of this information because it does change. And so making sure you have the most up-to-date information, you should go to the website. Some dates and deadlines to keep in mind. So the early application deadline is November the 7th, and then the early application document deadline, so submitting your One Idea and any outstanding transcripts, is December the 15th. And then the final deadline is the firm final deadline application deadline is January the 15th. And then the One Idea and document deadline will be February 2nd. So you do have a little bit of time to get in those extra documents. I would encourage you to apply as early as you can or as early as you are comfortable with. It doesn't guarantee that you will hear back sooner, but it does give us an opportunity to start reviewing applications and making decisions sooner. So you could hear back sooner if you're applying earlier by the early deadline. So to just give you a quick overview of what this whole process would look like, first thing you do is you submit your application. The recommended application deadline would be the November 7th one, with the final deadline being January 15th. Then you have an opportunity to log into the applicant portal. You can complete your One Idea supplemental application. And then for those of you who are interested in residence, you should indicate your interest in living in residence. And you do have to apply to residence by March 31st. And then decisions are made on a rolling basis. And so most decisions will be made between January till May. And again, if you are thinking about living in residence, it is guaranteed for all new and full-time students entering their first year. You do need to submit an application by the deadline of March 31st. You have to accept your offer by the deadlines and paying attention to all the deadlines and deposit requirements in order to maintain your eligibility. Scholarships and awards is something I'm sure many of you are thinking about and looking into. And so there are a number of different scholarships and awards, both through the Daniels faculty as well as the University of Toronto. Many of the automatic admission scholarships are just that. They're automatic. They'll be based on your grades and your One Idea submission, and they do not require a separate application. If any of our students joining us today are applying as international students, there are some additional international admission scholarships as well that have an automatic consideration. For students looking for additional scholarships and awards to apply to, you definitely can. There's an awards profile that you can complete. There's information available online, and there's something called U of T Financial Aid, which you might want to look at as well. If you are an Ontario student, you will want to look into the Ontario Students Assistance Programming. If you're applying from out of province, you'll want to check with your various provinces to see what financial aid and funding is available to you. Tuition fees. So these are based on the posted tuition fees, which are on the website right now. These are subject to change, so I always encourage you to check online for the most updated information. The incidental and ancillary fees do not change regardless of your status, so that's around $2,000. For our Ontario residents, they will pay around $6,100 in program fees. For our out-of-province students who are Canadian, you would be paying around $7,250, and our international students will be paying around $63,000, $64,000. And one more thing for our international students to keep in mind is that the UHIP, which is basically health insurance coverage, comes at a fee of around $792. And so something to keep in mind when you are doing your financial planning. The University of Toronto also has a very helpful website which helps you plan out your costs and expenses as to what you might be expected to pay while you're studying. So a few final tips that I want to share with you. If you were able to, I would strongly encourage you to come and visit us. Take a tour of the St. George campus. We do offer building tours of the John H. Daniels Faculty of Architecture, Landscape and Design, and we would love to take you around. Keep working on those grades and keep those up. And so all offers of admission are conditional if you have courses that are currently in progress, and so you want to make sure that you don't let that drop. We would also love for you to visit us on Fall Campus Day. So again, if you're in the area and you're coming to visit, a great day to come would be November the 15th. That is an open house for the entire St. George campus. And in the Daniels faculty, we will be offering building tours, information sessions with our program directors, an opportunity to chat and meet with our professors as well. Current students will share their experiences, and it should be a great opportunity to really understand the program and the space that you could be studying in. The QR code there will link you to the registration page for Fall Campus Day, and we would really love to welcome you to campus. As I mentioned earlier, we will be offering some information sessions about our two undergraduate programs. These will be completed virtually, and they are with our program directors. And so these are professors who teach in the program, and they will be able to walk you through in much more detail what the program looks like, what students do in the program, and are very informative and interesting. You can use the QR code there if you'd like to register for any one of our information sessions. And that's it for our formal presentation. I do want to thank you so much for joining us. For anybody who might be watching this recording and you have questions, please send them to future students at daniels.utoronto.ca. We are more than happy to answer any of the questions that you might have. And thank you for listening in.